Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Wrestlenomics TV ratings media event. As you know, this is not a wrestling podcast. This is not a wrestling video. This is a media video. And we have TV ratings to talk about once again, where we just got the rating. It is Thursday. By the way, I'm Brandon Thurston, broadcasting on demand from Buffalo, New York. Well, no, live from Buffalo, New York. See, I'm not used to this. I am broadcasting to you from a Wrestlenomics supercomputer. It has evaded death. I did try to screw the motherboard onto the case in such a way that the PC repairman says I nearly fried it, but everything is okay. Everything was saved, and thanks to Phil Chertok, I was able to get some more advice and able to install an operating system, and we are live streaming from it today. So, I'm Brandon Thurston, and we're going to talk about TV ratings today. We just got the AEW Dynamite number, 1,175,000 viewers. That's the gray dot right there. Let's look at P18 to 49, where, once again, for the second week in a row, is this up to date? This is not up to date. Let's just go to, this. The spreadsheet, the Wrestlenomics spreadsheet, where you can see, yes, Raw, 1.67 million viewers. AEW Dynamite, about 1.17 million viewers. But Dynamite edging out Raw in the key demo, 574,000 to 556,000. So, roughly 20,000 viewers in the Nielsen sample. A 4.4 demo rating, 0.44 to 0.43 demo rating. That's the latest news. We've also got big news from Smackdown. Smackdown did a big number at MSG. I think we'll talk about that. Raw went against Monday Night Football for the first time in the NFL season. And NXT 2.0. Don't you dare say NXT without following it with 2.0. That the NXT relaunch happened this week. So let's go to the slides here, and I'll make myself bigger because the slides do not take up as much of the screen. And hopefully everybody can read a little bit better what is on the screen. I've made some effort to make things a little bigger. Here's a more up-to-date 18 to 49 chart, where you can see last week Dynamite was ahead of Raw in the demo, narrowly by, 3,000 viewers. And this week, a slightly bigger margin in terms of Dynamite being ahead of Raw. In total viewership, of course, Raw way ahead because Raw and SmackDown are watched compared to AEW programs disproportionately with people over the age of 50. If we jump to... Do I want to jump to this? No. I want to jump to this. To look at the margins that Raw and Dynamite had over one another. A 42% lead Raw had over Dynamite. This is a 3% lead that Dynamite had in the demo. So last week was a less than 1% lead that Dynamite had over Raw. Of course, last week there was no Monday Night Football yet. And Dynamite essentially tied Raw in the demo. Again, this is largely driven by male viewers, as you can see here in the male 1849 demographic, up 24% over Raw. And it's really driven by the older half of the key demo, and overwhelmingly, disproportionately in the male portion of the 35 to 49. The older half is up 24%, so a quarter more is Dynamite's viewership with male viewers, with men, 35 to 49. People like me, I guess. So with female viewers, Raw still has a pretty solid margin, 37% in the entire female demo. In the older half, 35 to 49, 35% is their lead. So let's look at the younger half of the key demo, 18 to 34, younger adults. Raw ahead by just 1%. And I believe if we look at the actual numbers, it is a difference of 1,000 people, basically the smallest unit of measurement that we're dealing with here. We're dealing always in thousands is our unit of measurement. 187,000 viewers in the younger half of the key demo, 186,000 in the younger half of the key demo. Way back in the day, when Dynamite first came on TV, I sort of predicted that Dynamite and maybe NXT would eventually start to creep up on Raw and SmackDown in the 18 to 34 demographic. And really, it's been the older half of the 18 to 49 demo, the 35 to 49 demo, that's Dynamite here. As we know, NXT has gone in a different direction, which we'll talk about. But Dynamite, the older half of the key demo. And you can tell a story about maybe why that's happening. Bringing back CM Punk, bringing back Bryan Danielson, stars who were big stars for WWE. This is quite 10 years ago in the case of Punk, and Bryan was there too, and really hit his peak maybe in 2014 at WrestleMania 30. But maybe capturing older male viewers who were not so satisfied with the way WWE has done things in the last 10 years or so. But anyway, if we look here, why does that say SD? Is that correct? Let's look at the actual data from which this slide is derived. So SmackDown, I don't know why those are gray, but SmackDown was higher than AEW in every demographic that we have data for. SmackDown did a very big number this week, which we can talk about now. And Brock Lesnar's ponytail is a draw, clearly. SmackDown did 2.383 million viewers, nearly 2.4 million viewers, the highest number it has done since January. It's January 22nd. This is an image from Fox Sports' public relations. You could have gotten similar information on my Twitter account, but of course, they have some additional information, though, here. And the top markets that SmackDown performed in were Birmingham, Alabama, I think that is, Richmond, Virginia, Memphis, Tennessee, Tulsa, Oklahoma, or is that Tulsa's in Oklahoma, yeah, and Louisville, Kentucky. So don't tell Vince that those are the top markets for WWE SmackDown. And it was the most watched telecast of the day in 1849 throughout all of TV, not just cable. We can look here. Yeah, Dynamite was the most watched program among cable originals, and let's make that bigger because there's a lot of white space there. But Dynamite was the most watched program in 18 to 49 among cable originals. We don't know about reruns. Big Bang Theory could have been up there, but who knows? But as you can see here, last night on TV, Big Brother, America's Got Talent, Press Your Luck, MasterChef, and $100,000 Pyramid. These are game shows that I used to watch. Maybe on the USA Network, reruns of game shows with, this had the Pyramid had Dick Clark, right? Who was the host of Press Your Luck? Put it in the chat if you know. But yes, Dynamite beating out the challenge led by male viewers. Clearly, it's 0.62 demo rating, but the challenge doing really well with women 18 to 49. But anyway, the SmackDown rating was really good. The highest since Royal Rumble time. Had the return of Brock Lesnar. I think this was the first appearance of Brock Lesnar, right? And we've had Becky Lynch back too in the last few weeks. So SmackDown doing really well. And we can look at now how SmackDown is doing compared to last year. We're now doing comparisons in the Thunderdome era. If you look here where this blue arrow is pointing to the dot right here, that is last year where the first episode of the Thunderdome happened, and they did a big rating for that. That was also, I believe, the return to SmackDown of Roman Reigns after he had returned at SummerSlam last year. But this number outperforming that number in total viewership. What about the key demo? It outperformed in the key demo to last year's viewership. So if all other things were equal, the nature of TV is such that you would expect that a TV program is not going to be doing as well as it did last year, as the number of subscribers who have access to television just diminish and the competition and other options for entertainment increase. But SmackDown doing better than last year. Now, the big difference is they have fans in attendance, and people like Brock Lesnar and Becky Lynch weren't around at all in that entire, except for WrestleMania, the first WrestleMania in the pandemic. But other than that, they didn't have those stars at all. And Raw, this week, right on par with what it was doing last year in total viewership, but a pretty similar pattern you can see there too. And this big spike in green, I believe, is the post SummerSlam episode that did a big number. If we look in the demo, a more aggressive decline in the demo for Raw, as Raw went head-to-head for the first time since December probably, against Monday Night Football. And do I have Monday Night Football information here? That looks different than it did a moment ago to me. But what we have here, we can look at it here at least, right? These are all the week ones from 2015 to the present. And this is showing the key demo for Monday Night Football. In all the previous years that we're looking at here, there was a doubleheader. They kicked off the season with 2 games, not just one. These games, I don't believe, overlapped in time. They were consecutive. So we got 2 games last year, but only 1 game this year. This year, it was also simulcast on ABC. So 15.3 million viewers across ABC and ESPN, and ESPN2 even. I guess there was some sort of Peyton Manning thing on ESPN2, alternative viewing experience. So a big rating. Now this was simulcast on ABC as well. And Raw was down in total viewership pretty much on par in week 1 with prior years' week 1s. So down 11% versus the median of the last 4 weeks. But 1849 really took an especially hard hit. A little bit worse than this year of 2016 when it was down 19%. So I don't have data beyond 2015 offhand, but the lowest, the hardest hit in at least these years. And of course, they arguably counter-programmed against football and did the Money in the Bank cash-in with Big E winning the title over Bobby Lashley, which was the most viewed quarter hour, the most viewed 15 minutes. That segment coming at the very end of the show with over 1.8 million viewers. Again, that show averaged, if we look here, not there, but if we look here, maybe, 1.67 million was the overall 3-hour average for Raw. But again, this one did 1.84 million viewers. So a lot of these quarters, I guess, around here did it close to the average. Sort of a stronger first hour, it looks like. But it did 1.84 million viewers for the Big E title change, and over 600,000. In fact, the only quarter that did over 600,000, and it did well over 600,000 with 643,000 viewers in the key demo. So there's that. This is the growth across the quarter hours for Raw this past Monday. And the final quarter was also the quarter with the strongest growth. You can see this I've got this broken down by total viewership, which is what P2 plus means, people over the age of 2, in the 1849 key demo, and in outside of the demo, which is mostly people over the age of 50. That was on par or the most for growth. In total viewership, it was, because it went up 8% from the prior quarter, which was itself a title match between Bobby Lashley and Randy Orton, but still growing into the final 15 minutes, where I guess that match continued, to be fair, and then the final cash-in moment. So there's that. We've done Dynamite, Smackdown, Raw, and then we had the new more colorful. We're no longer in the Harley Davidson Wolfenstein 3D, black and gold era of NXT. I've been told even that there's no NXT TakeOver on the calendar through November at least. That could change, but no TakeOver is planned. Maybe this is the end of the TakeOver era, and now we are on to the 2.0, more colorful, less indie, taller NXT. And NXT this week, if we look at the numbers here, 770,000 viewers. biggest move from Wednesday to Tuesday, and it was no longer opposed head-to-head with AEW Dynamite. But since then, there's been mostly a decline, especially through probably the spring here. It grew a little bit in, I don't know, what is this, a period of about 6 weeks ago. And there was some interest around the time that there was reported turmoil in NXT and NXT being overhauled, which we finally saw the realization of on Tuesday night on the USA Network. And it did a really strong rating, which proves, of course, that tall people rule. And how did it do in the key demo? A similar comparison in terms of this being the highest viewership for NXT in the key demo since very early. This looks like the second week in the Tuesday night era for NXT. I've gone completely out of order of these slides here, so I'm just looking to see if I missed anything. Of course, we've got this one. There's some news coming out of last night's Dynamite airing that Rampage, not this week, not this Friday, but the next week's Friday, will be a 2-hour program, still starting at 10, going to midnight. So that is conspicuous, isn't it? Why is this one? Obviously, this is going to be the Arthur Ashe Stadium taping. This will be a tape show. So it's a big show. It's going to be the biggest attendance that AEW has ever done. It's going to be the biggest live gate that AEW has ever done, approaching $1 million in ticket revenue. So I'm sure they want to show off the crowd, and why not do an extra hour since this is, by size, the biggest AEW show ever. I wonder if this is a sign of things to come. I can't remember if the preemptions that of all the Friday night Dynamites that were obviously on Friday, if those were done before or after it was announced that that Rampage was going to be a show that was going to be on Friday. I wonder if there's going to be a 2-hour Rampage sometime in the future. That would go well beyond the current agreement of what I believe to be the case between AEW and Warner Media, where the renewed deal, which was agreed to in January 2020, was, I believe, for 3 hours for a 2-hour Dynamite, and then for an additional 1-hour show that they would establish later, which became Rampage. If AEW was to put on an extra hour of weekly content for Warner Media / Turner, I would have to think that would mean an increase in compensation substantially for AEW. I've been skeptical of what the addition of Rampage really meant, because I think the agreement was all part of the January 2020 agreement, and I think there's probably additional ad revenue share for AEW to make because they're on TNT for an additional hour. But to add an additional weekly hour of content is another story. I don't have a slide for this, but there's 2 weeks coming up where in this first half of October that AEW Dynamite will presumably be preempted for NHL hockey on Wednesday night. And I wonder if we don't just see AEW Dynamite moved in those weeks to TBS because that's where Dynamite and Rampage are going to live permanently as of January. So why not train the audience if the scheduling works out? I don't know. I was looking at the scheduling as far as what this is separate, I guess, about the earlier topic I was talking about a minute ago. I was looking at the schedule for TNT and TBS earlier about, what do they usually air on Friday nights, and would there be room not just for Rampage to be 2 hours, 10 to 12, but would there be room for Rampage to be 2 hours, 9 to 11? Of course, this would make my job more interesting and would cause the internet to be set ablaze. But if Rampage were to go for 1 hour out of its 2 hours, hypothetically, head to head with Smackdown, I think the question is, if we're being highly speculative here, but if Rampage were to go 2 hours, the later you go, the harder it is to retain viewership because people go to sleep. As we know, sleep is competition. Sleep is our competition. But seriously, as it gets later, it's harder to retain viewers because it gets later in the night and people want to go to bed. So what's tougher competition? Sleep from 11 to midnight or Smackdown from 9 to 10? I'm not sure. So something, if this happens, something to weigh if other factors don't get in the way. So that's Rampage for 2 hours. I've got this that I put together this week. As people who may have been following my work for a while, I may have seen in some spreadsheets these gauges where I'm trying to give a sort of a mathematical answer to, was this a good rating this week? How do we think about that? And what I'm always using as a comparison is the median of the last 4 weeks. And usually I want to use this only for the last 4 episodes that were in the normal time slot. So we're not gonna include in this, if possible, for example, NXT on Sci-Fi when it was preempted, or any of the Dynamite preemptions, or if SmackDown presumably will be preempted again for the World Series in October to FS1. We wouldn't want to include that, but just 4 typical instances of what this program did, and use that as a median, because maybe there's a really high or really low episode that would skew an average. So we use a median instead, and we compare the given episode to the trailing 4 weeks. And what I've done there is I've taken the P2 Plus and the 18 to 49, taking both of those differences by percentage, and then I just average them, and that's what we've got in this column here. And we've got the 6, by God, there's 6 nationally televised wrestling programs on TV in 2021, and just going by that to give us a sort of at least a mathematical answer about whether or not this was a good rating, how far out of the norm was this. And these gauges are set from a minimum of a -30 to a maximum of a +70. I decided to go +70 because that is the biggest increase, that is the biggest delta of this kind that I found, and that's happened pretty recently for I think it might be the second Rampage or the first Dynamite with Punk. But anyway, if we look, we've got who's the furthest in the green. NXT is the furthest in the green. This was, for NXT, the most of a deviation positively from the norm. SmackDown does get into the green. You might want to think of, and this is obviously on a continuum. High in the yellow is pretty good, and in the green starts to be outstanding, and so on if you go above that. And maybe in the red we could think of as a bad rating. And that's what we've got for Raw, keeping in mind that this was Raw going against Monday Night Football. But SmackDown doing a really good rating here. Raw not so good. Dynamite pretty good compared to what it's been doing lately. Rampage not so good compared to what it's been doing lately. Not that much of a history yet for Rampage. But NXT doing really good compared to what it's been doing lately. And Impact just on the boundary of a not good rating here, with it being down 10% versus the median of the last 4 for Impact. And let's take a look at this too. This is basically taking a mathematical way to try to answer how well are these programs trending. So I've taken a 90-day, what I'll call in my non-statistical education as the 90-day momentum. Basically, I've taken the slope and the R² of the last 90 days for these programs, multiplied those two numbers together. Stay with me here. And then I think I adjusted it for the number of episodes too. And what we have is SmackDown doing the best by this comparison, Dynamite doing the next best, followed by Raw. And that adds up to me that these are programs that have done pretty well lately, especially since the return to touring and return of fans. These are the 3. Well, I guess Rampage is, I was going to say, a main roster program, but these are the programs that have been doing really well lately in terms of growing viewership. Rampage doesn't have 90 days yet to look at, but eventually it will. NXT was just barely positive here, and Impact doing similar. And then I set a number of arbitrary boundaries and established them all as A minus, or B plus, etc. And so we have letter grades here. This is the U.S. letter grade system, of course. I don't know if this would be a first, in the UK, but an A for SmackDown and Dynamite, and an A minus for Raw. C pluses for both of NXT and Impact. And just to follow up on something that I was trying to talk about last time, where I couldn't remember what the timelines were for the contracts for WWE and AEW. So this is it. This is the US TV rights agreements timeline. So the Raw and SmackDown deals with Fox and NBC Universal, they expire at the same time at the end of September 2024. AEW's deal with Warner Media, the minimum term expires December 2023. Warner Media has a 1-year option that it can just continue the year for an additional year, reportedly at an increase in fees. I believe both of these deals are for an increase in compensation over time, from 1 year to the next, at least in that frequency. The wrestling companies are getting paid a little bit more each year. So there's that. And then NXT, its initial deal will expire at the end of this month, in fact, and they've already announced that they have a new deal. It's been they put out a press release saying in March that it's a multi-year deal. We don't know how long it is for, but a multi-year deal. So I have not put any other information on this chart here. But this would be the likely negotiation period, in my assessment, for Raw and SmackDown and probably Warner Media. I lean towards thinking that Warner Media will pick up the option and extend this. Dynamite's doing well in ratings. It's ranked number 1 again today, or last night, in cable. So the ratings are performing well. They're ranking highly. I think they'll pick up the option. Things could change between now and whenever they have to decide about that, but that's what I lean towards expecting to happen. So that means that the AEW deals, or the AEW deal, and the WWE deals will expire just 3 months apart from one another, if that's the case. And there isn't any sort of option associated with NBC Universal or Fox. And if previous negotiation periods are any indication, the negotiation period will be somewhere around here in the middle of 2022 or so through the middle of 2023 or so. So these deals get done a while before they expire. Last time they announced the deal, it was about 18 months in advance of the expiration of the current deal. So that's when I expect that to happen. And one of the big unknown questions that I have is, to what degree, if any, are these programs' existences going to affect each other's TV rights value? AEW is not competition in the public opinion of WWE, but are they going to be competition for TV rights in terms of our TV executives who WWE might be negotiating with? Might they look at the negotiations with WWE and say, well, do I want to pay X for WWE when there's this cheaper option over here in AEW that might be delivering similar results? At least in these last 2 weeks, Dynamite has delivered similar results in 18 to 49 viewership. Probably talk more about that another time, but just to lay that out, what is the in my view, the real main event, the real highly anticipated events that we're looking forward to? What is the timing of that? The negotiation period is right in here, the middle of next year to the middle of 2023. So there's that. And I guess, well, we can talk a little bit more about this. That just to add some support to why I think AEW is due for a pretty big increase to get closer to the value of what WWE is getting compensated for its TV rights values. Where if we look at the percentage of watch time, if we think of all of the linear TV viewing that's happening for Raw and SmackDown and AEW programs, we're not going to include NXT in this. Just think about this as one pool of TV watch time, since I'm not sure about what the value is of NXT. And we're not going to include Impact here because I'm not sure what that value is either. And they're being, they're owned and broadcast by their parent company, Anthem. But if we look at the percentage of watch time, basically I've taken the viewership and multiplied it by the hours, and what we get is AEW providing about 23% of the total viewership watch time, providing about 30% of the 18 to 49 watch time. But there's some estimation in here, but getting only 9% of the compensation. AAV stands for average annual value, average annual payments that these companies are getting. We've got AEW again providing about 23% or maybe as much as 30%, depending on what you think is the more important factor here. They're providing that much of the candy bar here, but only getting one bite when they're providing, on this one, just under a third of the TV viewing time. So there's that. And this is a chart of the rankings. I think one factor in why these programs are so valuable and maybe NXT is not. You look at where NXT has been ranking on average over the last few years. Obviously, this 2021 is year to date. It's been ranking on average number 25 among cable originals. SmackDown is not on cable, but it's been doing really well on broadcast. And we've got Raw, really in terms of our rank, in this year to date, doing better than ever. So even though Raw's viewership has declined over the years, really since the return to fans as well, Raw has been doing just fine, in at least this way, better than it's been at least since 2014. And in 2021, since the Wednesday Night War has ended and there's no wrestling show going head-to-head with Dynamite, Dynamite has been doing better this year in its ranking than it was doing in the last 2 years. So there's that. And if we compare these programs' performance to, this is the top 50 non-news cable programs. We exclude news because news has held up really well, especially in the years of Trump and the pandemic. But if we look at just the top 50 daily non-news cable programs, those have been down to this degree. Down 10%, 13%, 11%, 23%, 13%. Now, if we lay the wrestling programs trends over top of those, what we can see is that Raw and SmackDown did just a little bit better than the decline of TV overall in 2017. Similar, even a little bit better than that in 2018. But Raw doing worse than the decline of TV overall or cable, the top 50 non-news cable programs. Down 17% to the top 50 non-news cables, 11%. Meanwhile, SmackDown held up better. And then in 2020, in the year of the pandemic, Raw fell really hard. I wouldn't take this NXT number too seriously because we're comparing it just to a few months of NXT. But SmackDown did better, but of course we're comparing in the year of 2020 SmackDown to a Fox SmackDown to a USA Network SmackDown. And then here, year to date, in 2021, what is the decline? I'm able to do this, by the way, because Showbiz Daily restored all of its data in its hiatus. But year to date, in 18 to 49, non-news cable is down 13%. Meanwhile, all the wrestling programs are doing better than that, at least. They're on a decline somewhat, but better than the trends of cable overall. And in fact, AEW is in a positive comparison, largely because of it not having to go against NXT since April. So there's that. If people have questions, you can put them in the chat. Hopefully the tech has been holding up. And I think as I scroll through these things here, just to be sure, I think I've gone through all my slides here. So if anyone has any questions, I will scroll through them now. So let's see here. How many people, by the way? I've not been looking at the chat. We have 97. Not bad. Not a bad rating for this Wrestlenomics media event. Yes, I've been, as you can see, I've been spending the entire day on the stock market, laying down puts and calls. I don't know what those are, but that sounded good. I'm looking for question marks, and let's see here. Corey asks, do you think WWE/USA are disappointed with NXT's numbers given all the advertising they did? I think before this week, I think there's disappointment to be had about NXT. I I can imagine internally in WWE. I think I wouldn't be surprised if there was an expectation that AEW was going to be as tough competition as it was, and that it was going to be more along the lines of the effectiveness of what TNA was, or something like that, or what Impact is. And I think they thought that NXT would be able to beat AEW Dynamite in ratings, and it wasn't. But I think, I think I don't know if this is part of Corey's question, but I think the NXT 2.0 rating is good. It's encouraging. It would be bad if it was just flat, but we'll see what happens in the weeks to come. That's where we'll really learn whether people are going to be into this repackaged, more colorful, less indie, taller NXT. NXT 2.0. So let's see if there are any other questions. Do I have the stat of Dynamite per hour? I'm not quite sure what that means. If you want to rephrase that in the chat, I will give it another try. And that might be along the lines of what I just discussed in terms of sort of the value per hour is sort of what we were getting at with where is it? With this bar graph here. Let's just see if there's any. Oh, I see a question here. Do you see NXT staying on USA for the foreseeable future? This is from Dustin. Yes. I mean, they've got a new deal, and I think the idea that NXT would be canceled or something is probably a fantasy. I don't see WWE really wanting to put it back on the network. I mean, I guess they could. The justification for taking NXT off of the WWE network and putting it onto the USA network publicly, the justification was that they would be, maybe they would be able to take this NXT, which is this strengthening emerging brand that was just supposed to be developmental and really overperformed what it was supposed to be. Take that and put it on linear TV and see if you can get some really strong TV rights fees. Maybe not as much as what Raw and Smackdown are getting, but something strong. And apparently that didn't happen. Didn't happen. There was speculation early on when the NXT to USA deal was announced that maybe the deal is worth as much as $50 million per year, or some analysts were speculating even $100 million per year. I don't know what it's worth. I would guess somewhere around $20 million per year, at least the first deal. And I think the new deal is roughly flat. I think, why do I think that? Because there were questions during the earnings call following the announcement that the NXT deal on USA had been renewed. There were questions from an analyst to Chief Financial Officer Christina Salen to the effect of, does the NXT deal change your financial guidance? And she essentially said, no, it didn't, which makes me think that it certainly wasn't a big upgrade. You would think that they would leak that to the Hollywood Reporter or to the Sports Business Journal if the NXT deal was really impressive and would really added to their profitability. It didn't. They didn't. So I think the NXT deal is I've heard speculation. I've been told by one person on one occasion that the NXT deal is worth virtually nothing. Who knows? But I think the deal not being big money, not achieving the publicly stated goal that NXT is being moved from the network to linear TV, to the USA Network, in order to grow a third brand of TV rights values. And the fact that it didn't is part of the reason, in addition to losing the Wednesday Night War, is the reasons why we're seeing NXT repackaged here. It was, in many ways, a disappointment. And as I said a few times, I hope Paul Levesque writes an honest autobiography someday. It will be fascinating. I wonder what he was doing on Tuesday night. So let's see if we have any other questions here as I scroll through. I think that's all. So I don't want to stretch this out too long. We've been looking for a timer, but I don't see one. I'm going to have to look at OBS. 40 minutes. That's pretty good. Hopefully the video quality was good. I know that usually this is okay. What's usually a challenge, what's more of a challenge, is when I have Chris Gullo with me, or at other times when I've had Chris Harrington as a guest with me, and I've got to support another person's video stream in addition to mine and all the other things I'm doing with my computer. But now we have a Wrestlenomics supercomputer thanks to our patrons. Perfect time for a plug. Thanks to our patrons at patreon.com/Wrestlenomics, we were able to reinvest your support into making Wrestlenomics better, making Wrestlenomics more powerful. A lot of what I've been doing lately is just figuring out different ways to automate things that would take a long time and would be super tedious otherwise, whether that's learning how to do Python or whether that's getting a computer that's more efficient and faster. But anyway, you can subscribe to the Wrestlenomics Patreon at patreon.com/Wrestlenomics. You get TV reports nearly every weekday that I write. You get access to this big spreadsheet here with all of the data, over 15,000, according to this, 18,000, nearly 19,000 data points. This is the spreadsheet that I use. Firsthand, I have this open every day. Every day on my computer, I'm looking at this and doing something in it. That's part of your access as a subscriber. Plus, I do other stuff. There's other reports, including Google Trends reports and things of that nature. You'll get audio of this podcast if it's more convenient for you to just listen to this in audio passively rather than having to look at a YouTube video. The audio of this will be in the Patreon podcast feed soon. So there's that. That's just $5 a month for all that. You can also follow me on Twitter at Wrestlenomics and at Brandon Thurston. Talk to everybody next time on the podcast, the free podcast for everybody, Wrestlenomics Radio, in your